Welcome back, everyone. I am Richard Bistrong, and I am here at LRN's headquarters in New York, joined by LRN's Chief Advisory Officer, Ty Francis.
Hello, Richard.
And Ty, we're going to continue our discussion on LRN's 2025 Ethics and Compliance Program Effectiveness Report. We're now going to talk about resource and resources. So, Ty, how can ethics and compliance program leaders overcome resource constraints to achieve better compliance outcomes? And we're certainly in a time of economic uncertainty. Budgets are not limited. I mean, is it even possible to do more with less?
Well, it's about working smarter, not harder. So just looking at some of the data from the report showed us that high impact programs, and again, those are the programs that use ethical decision making, organizational justice, and speak up as part of their program effectiveness, they were twice as likely to use advanced technologies in their compliance program than medium impact. And the best thing about that was they were also twice as likely to catch risks and prevent risks than medium impact programs. So it's about data. It's about, again, working smarter. Years ago, the evaluation of corporate compliance programs from the DOJ stated three major things. Is your compliance program well designed? And the third one was, does your compliance program work in practice? It's the middle one we're talking about. Is your compliance program adequately resourced and delivered in earnest and had leadership buy-in? And that resource allocation part was always adequate. And it was always very ambiguous. Go back to September last year when the DOJ came out with probably the most prescriptive advice about resource allocation, when they asked companies to kind of defend how they're staffing and resourcing their programs. Was it proportionate to the size of the company or the size of the commercial operation? For example, prosecutors could look to you and say, well, you spent $25 million on marketing, but $500,000 on compliance, but you've had all these ethical misconduct breaches. Are you delivering your compliance program in earnest? So when we look at resource allocation, it's not just about people. It's about how you're using the resources you have. Look, it was very heartening to see high impact programs using more data analytics, but still there's a big gap between how high impact programs operate and medium and low impact programs. Still, most compliance programs still have no real grasp on how to use that data. The DOJ has been asking for years to not only prove that you have data, but show that you're using data to go back and bolster your compliance program. Use it to identify upcoming risks. I'm afraid that medium and low impact programs are still being very reactive. They're not predicting risks. And also without that data, they're not able to adequately resource their programs because they don't know where their programs are falling down. So yes, there is a credit crunch. People are trying to spend less, but I think that compliance teams need to be focusing on the tools they have at hand or using more advanced data and analytics tools to measure the effectiveness of their programs, because otherwise you're just doing the same thing over and over again, hoping for a different result. So yes, compliance officers are being very cautious about the money they're spending, but I think we're here to help them spend that money more wisely and looking at data analytics, predicting what can happen next rather than hoping.
That's such an interesting point, because if we go back, let's say a decade, there was almost a visceral reaction to, if there's an issue, maybe not even in the company, but in our industry, how many more people do we need to add to staff, right? It was just about the size and the amount of people on a compliance team. But now there's so many other tools beside headcount to address risk. So that's a real bright spot.
It is a bright spot. And the thing is, we've had these messages coming across from the DOJ for the last 5 years. Yeah. In between the lines, they've been asking us to use our data more effectively. And, if we have these great dashboards that can show us all this longitudinal data from different parts of the company, from different effects we're using to measure our written standards and reporting, our investigations, our hotline data, surely we should be able to build more robust programs using that data, not having to bring in more members of staff.
And the fact that the Justice Department has someone that focuses on data analytics, I mean, that's a huge statement in itself.
What it did, and Matt Garvin, you're talking about, came over from AB InBev, he's come in to do this, to show the DOJ how data analytics can be used to make more effective programs. And high impact programs are already doing that. But again, it's the medium impact programs, the low impact programs we need to focus on. And it's not difficult. There's access to data everywhere. It's just being able to kind of harness that data to make their programs more robust.
Fantastic. Well, Ty, we're going to have some rapid fire or lightning round questions to finish this off. Now, Ty, you've been doing this for a while, and that doesn't mean I'm calling you old, by the way.
I'm not Gen Z, that's for sure.
So, like, in your work, in the survey, like, let's talk about surprises, and we'll go with let's get them out of the way. What were the negative surprises?
Well, again, the leadership disconnect. After the pandemic, after we released our findings in 2021, showing that there was a considerable leadership disconnect between leadership and their frontline workers, we really felt there would be a change. With, again, so much data and so many people doing engagement surveys and culture surveys, we really felt like companies were getting better, understanding who their employees were. With so many employees having access to data, whether by Zoom, by Teams, SharePoint, the world was kind of coming together and opening up. We really felt this was going to change, but we've seen a bigger gap. Yeah. And I think the gap between leadership and middle management is 42% now. Yeah. So that's big. That was disappointing to see. I'd hoped that, listen, I'm pleased for high impact programs and I'm pleased that they're using their data progressively, but I still feel there's a lot of work to do by medium impact programs. And I truly believe it's that middle management kind of filter that's being clogged up.
Well, were there any hooray moments when you were looking at the survey data?
Well, again, it was, it's the fact that high impact programs are progressively more effective at doing their jobs than medium impact programs. I think we talked about, they were 1.8 times more likely to use AI. They were, much more likely to use data analytics to prevent future risk. So we are using data more progressively. We're using it more holistically to kind of make sure our programs are more effective. So that's great news for us. Yeah. I still think we've got a lot of work to do.
There was a great article that I read in a Sloan journal not too long ago, and it said, if you want to build culture, build it from the middle out.
Well, and that's the new normal now. I think we get the leadership teams and boards, they have a handle on what their messaging should be. And you're starting to see in codes of conduct, the CEO has a message in there. You see in annual reports and proxy statements. We've got that. We understand that. But I think now there needs to be more of a focus on middle management and training as well. So, there needs to be more adaptive and different training for managers. Managers who have responsibilities over hundreds or thousands of people. You can't train an employee who's working on the factory floor the same way you train a senior manager. Yes. So I think that needs to change. And we've got all the tools to do it. And if you add in the generational gap between Gen Z and the boomer generation, where in our former study of ethical culture last year, that Gen Zs were 2.2 times more likely to ignore or not report ethical misconduct than Generation X, which is me. That's a huge risk in an organization. So again, unless you can kind of capture that data, you are not going to be able to do anything with it.
Ty, this has been a great conversation. Thank you so much. Thanks everyone for joining us, and we will see you soon, I am sure. Thank you again.